second stage of the process. And the process to which I speak, of course, relate to the court process and the court system, as well as the system that allows for the grant of a driver's license, and that is the revenue authority arm of the state. Mr. Speaker, then it deals with the question of ticketing offences. As Your Honour would be aware, and as members of this Honourable House are aware, we amended our law to create a regime of offences for which persons can be ticketed or given a ticket, and they are required to pay those tickets at the clerk at a police station. The demerit system is also applicable to those types of offences as they would have been enumerated in the third schedule. So whenever there is a ticketing offence committed, then the police officer, where the ticket is being paid, in particular the officer in charge of the station, has to go through that same recording process of recording the merit system on the driver's license of the person who is guilty of the offense. The bill also speaks to the question where you have a multiplicity or more than one offenses created or committed out of the same act. It is not unusual, Mr. Speaker, as a lawyer you would know, for there to be several offenses committed out of a singular vehicular collision. And when in such a circumstance, of course, each of those offenses may carry individual demerit points. The bill says that the higher one is to be recorded, and not everyone. And of course, there is at the end of the bill how the points are accumulated. And perhaps I should read that, clause 33B, where the demerit points accumulated by a person amounts to 10 or more, but less than 60, the period of disqualification from holding or obtaining a driver license shall be 6 months. And as the gravity of the offenses increase and as the points correspondingly increase, the period of disqualification becomes more serious and more lengthy. And then, of course, Mr. Speaker, there is a whole regime of safety mechanisms contained in the bill which are designed to ensure that the person against whom this demerit has adequate remedies in satisfaction of the rules of fairness and natural justice. The licensing authority, for example, is required under the bill to write to the person before and give him an opportunity to show cause why he should not be restrained from holding a driver's license or why he should not be suspended. So there's that whole system in place there. And if the driver, if the person aggrieved is dissatisfied with the penalty imposed, then he has a right to file an appeal to the High Court seeking to appeal that decision which he finds so offensive. And Mr. Speaker, the other clauses of the bill are simply consequential to the main thrust and the main concepts of it which I have outlined. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is a most important bill, and I believe that this bill should, win the support of all members of this National Assembly. It deals with the important question of crime, but more particularly, it corrects certain lacuna in our statutory framework in relation to motor vehicles, but I think of greater and more fundamental importance is the fact that it introduces a very effective, proven to be effective mechanism, and a mechanism that our people have called for a long time, that is the demerit point system into the legislative regime and architecture of our country. I therefore commend this bill to the House, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Attorney General. I now invite Honorable Mr. Bassett Williams, Deputy Speaker, to address the Assembly.
Thank you. The next place is you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised the Honorable Attorney General addressed us for such a lengthy time. The situation is that the bill has two aspects of it. The demerit system, of course, one will have to complement, but one must recognize it comes against a backdrop of these type of statistics. And might I respectfully refer you to the January 7, 2014 edition of the Kaisho News. Caption 2013 road fatalities exceed previous year. And the demerit system isn't just another measure that is sought to address the carnage on our roads. And I quote, according to statistics from the Guyana Police Force Traffic Headquarters in 2013, there were 112 deaths from 103 accidents on the country's roadways, as compared to 110 that died as a result of 102 accidents in 2012. This amounted to an average of 9 deaths each month, 9 road deaths each month. The Ministry of Home Affairs, in a statement released last week, stated that the main causes of fatal accidents in 2013 were speeding, inattentiveness, and driving under the influence of alcohol. Mr. Speaker, it continued that during the past year, 10 children, 18 motorcyclists, 13 pedal-cyclists, 17 drivers, 22 passengers perished on the country's roadways. And it's in this context that we see this attempt is being made. The Pago, for example, on the 23rd of March, there was an incident in Bagoli, which increased the fatalities to 25 so far in 2014 at that time, compared one more in 2013. We're supposed to have, sir, the 5th highest death rate from road accidents among countries in the Americas. And we've heard the former Minister of Health, the Honorable Member Ramsamy, giving us serious statistics about the costs, the medical costs of dealing with carnage on our roads. And therefore, one should welcome the demerit system and trust that it's supplied in a manner in which it would make it very effective. I'm not dealing with that demerit system in any detail. The Honorable Member, Mr. Felix, will deal with that in more detail. But the other aspect, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad for the explanation given by the Honorable Attorney General, because on the mere visual apprehension of the bill, I had the impression that it was trying to deal with mischief, civil mischief. And that mischief would entail where you have a registered owner being abroad, for example, and someone is using the vehicle in Guyana, gets into an accident, and in terms of civil liability, if you wish to sue the registered owner is abroad, and you have to seek recourse to the driver. And many times the drivers of those vehicles are straw men, are straw persons. And so you really need to get to the owner. But he has given an explanation, and I must say it's curious in the realm of criminal law, because I must say first of all, that there is no vicarious liability under the criminal law. There's no vicarious liability under the criminal law. So, whether you're owner or not, and you have incurred criminal liability under the criminal law, the law acts against you. It acts against you. So there's one in civil law, is vicarious liability. So somebody drives a vehicle, gets into an accident, you the owner, they could sue you and the driver, and they try to establish that the driver was acting as your servant or agent in the circumstances. But certainly, sir, this new provision in clause 6, which provides to any person who drives or operates a motor vehicle used in the commission of an offense, it's only that person the criminal law could attach. So you don't need to have the registered owner for criminal offense. So if you're involved in driving a vehicle to facilitate a criminal offense, you an aider or abettor, or you might have counsel procured it, whatever position it is, they act against you, not the registered owner. So that is something that we need to address clearly in our minds, that you don't have to have the owner of any vehicle to incur criminal liability in respect of such criminal offenses. You act against the person directly. And in that context, are the curious that we're going to deem the person who is a hirer under hire purchase agreement to be the owner, because as the AG indicated, on the hiring agreement you do not become an owner until you pay the last installment. And then the hirer, you want to deem that hirer to be an owner. But a lot of people come into this country and they hire vehicles and they leave within a week or 2 weeks. A lot of people hire vehicles for short periods. So what happens in the case of that person comes into the country, hires a vehicle, gets into an accident, jumps on a plane, and returns to wherever they came from? What is the relevance of registered owner in this context? How could you deem the hirer to be the owner? And he's abroad. That's why the civil law, as it is relevant. Because you don't have to worry with the hirer. You move against the registered owner. So I don't know, it's curious. I suggest that they might need to have a relook at it. For example, the registered owner is abroad, and a member of the household, the member of the household doesn't fall in any of these categories. Takes up the car, drives it, gets into an accident. There's no deeming provision to make the man's son or a friend an owner. So in that case, you still have to have recourse to the registered owner. So it's something that has to be, it needs to be looked at again. And, but I don't know, it has totally no relevance in the criminal law. Because in the criminal law, the law acts against a person who is suspected of committing that criminal offense. And so, Mr. Speaker, with those short observations, I would like to say that the APNU would not hesitate to support the aspect of the demerit system. But we would also suggest that there's we should fine-tune the whole question about the need for deeming persons to be the registered owner for the commission of a criminal offense. Because there's no vicarious liability under the criminal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Remember, I invite someone from the last exchange, Mr. Kevin Trumpton, to speak.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Motion, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we grow as a nation and the various activities become more complicated and complex, we are going to see that the existing law may have difficulties in capturing that which in a previous time our law had captured. And indeed, with the complexities of the criminal law that were advanced here through various pieces of legislation, trying to get at the culprits, and also in relation to concepts like hire purchase coming into being, when it it matters now as regards motor vehicles, we need to modernize and advance and refine so that we can, in a sense, take care of that which was unforeseen in the early 1950s, 60s scenario. And I think that that is primarily the purpose here in expanding the ownership definition under the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, so as to get at what the Honorable Attorney General indicated, those who might have invoked certain arguments to escape the application upon them. And to that extent then, the purpose of this is something honorable to the extent that the Alliance for Change would support. But I want to also say that notwithstanding the creation of this expansion, or the expansion of this definition, we are going to have scenarios where, or eventualities, where people might very well outsmart this piece of legislation. And realizing that parliamentarians are not going to be that omniscient to know every scenario that will come into being where a smart aleck is going to create some problems with our magistracy and even the judiciary. We have to state that being an impossibility, the Alliance for Change is going to support it as is, and hope that when those other scenarios come into being, that we then see an escape out of these provisions, that we are going to come here to amend further so that we can get at them. We see the point made by Mr. Basil Williams, honorable member. There is another point made by my good friend, Mr. Nagabutu, just now, indicating in relation to the hirer situation, we can have the hire purchase arrangement where a certain, who does this? Mr. B.M. Soot or one of them, they transfer the registration to the person. I noticed you would have gotten up when I mentioned that. But I suspected that you would have gotten up when I would have mentioned that. But assuming now they transfer the registration after making an initial deposit, and then we have this scenario, having the registration certificate, that hiree then sells the property over to a third party, not having paid off a certain Mr. B.M. Soot. Mr. B.M. Soot, no, this third party pays off all the money to the car, gets the registration certificate, but you have this scenario, Mr. B.M. Soot not being paid, or whosoever the hirer was, he now comes and takes the vehicle out. Hey, I haven't been paid. I am saying that we should have had also, and this is an observation that the Attorney General took, an annotation in these registration certificates that this registration, just like in the transport where you put it in red markings, subject to a mortgage, it should be an annotation therein that will say subject to a hire purchase agreement that will be cancelled in future, or at least it's ready there, so that a third party could know, and a third party can be informed and will be a bona fide purchaser with notice, so you can't quarrel after if indeed the original proprietor, B.M. Soot, is owed lots of money. But it is a movement forward, and on that score, we feel that it is something that ought to be supported, and we are going to so support this bill. Thank you very much. As regards the other aspect, if I may say that, it is long in coming, this demerit system. It is an advanced system that can be useful to incentivize better driving on our roads. Yes, and so it is something that, though late, we support. It should have been here a long time, and a lot of people have been talking about the demerit system, like in countries in more advanced democracies. But we have it now, so we're going to support it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramzan. I invite our member, Mr. Siraj, to speak to the motion to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the amendment that is currently before this House is one of a number of other amendments that Guyana is currently trying to push ahead with in this era of the modernization of various pieces of legislation. This particular act itself has gone through a few amendments in the recent past, among which has to do with the issue of fees. There is also the issue of amendment to cater for the enforcement of wearing of seat belts. And there are also the most recent one, if my recollection is correct, has to do with breath analysis to determine the level of alcohol in one's system at the time of driving. So this further amendment, as proposed by the Honorable Attorney General, is also addressing a situation whereby with a number of factors that have been contributing to the kind of fatalities that the Honorable Attorney General mentioned, and he said in particular the carnage on our roads. And I would venture forward to say that given our population density, we probably have one of the highest, if not the highest, deaths on the road on a per capita basis, which makes it even more important for us to enact legislation and also to make changes to existing legislation to cater for the new needs as they arise. Mr. Speaker, I fully support the amendment like my colleagues who spoke before me. And I also want to mention that the situation that Honorable Member Mr. Ramjatan raised that has to do with third party, I think the current situation with higher purchase, I've seen one recently. I had to make some representation to someone living in my street as it relates to higher purchase. And I think the dealers, these auto dealers, are protecting themselves from this third party arrangement by really keeping the registration in their name until their last installment is paid. And I think the Honorable Attorney General made that comment. Probably the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, was not in the House at that time. But needless to say, there might be some instances where some people are not really up to date with these new things that are coming into place. And given the situation of these various experiences, then everyone learns. Some learn by the experiences of others, whilst there are also other dealers who will learn from their own experiences in correcting these small flaws. Because people with bad intentions will always seek to examine any given piece of legislation, any agreement, if the intention is not good, to see how they can wriggle out of a situation that really calls upon them to honor their obligations. Mr. Speaker, there is also a new addition to Clause 6. Clause 6, there's a new addition, 108A, which also seeks to address this issue of the person who is actually using the vehicle at the time an offense would have been committed, or at the time a crime might have been commissioned. And I think this new addition into Clause 6 has moved some way from the old Act to bring about responsibility to the person who would have been in possession or would have been in possession of the vehicle at that particular point in time, and not necessarily the owner. And of course, the legislation having their auditor. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to close by lending my support to the amendment that has been proposed to the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2004, Bill number 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I invite Honourable Member
Thank you very much,
address us on the bill.
Mr. Speaker. I do not want to traverse the ground already traversed by three eminent lawyers in dealing with the legal aspect of the registration, hire purchase and so on of new vehicles. I have a very special relationship with the merit point system because I've seen it emerge as a suggestion in the Ghana police force in the 1987-88 period. So I've seen it in gestation. Mr. Speaker, my pleasure today is that it is in this parliament I am likely to witness its figurative work. But I have an issue which I would like to bring before this parliament. We would like to improve, as the Honorable Attorney General and Mr. Honorable Member Mr. Basil Williams has alluded to, the high accident rates, the high fatal accident rate in this country. That is what we want to correct. The high point of this bill is about disqualification either for a 6-month or a 12-month period. Mr. Speaker, my question is, are we going to correct, or is it the intention that at the end of the period of disqualification, whether 6 or 12 months, that drivers will automatically change from their errant ways to their good ways, or to better driving? And that's my problem with this bill. My suggestion is, most respectfully to the honorable member on the other side, is that during the period of suspension, we should have remedial training. I don't see drivers training. We have some awful drivers on the streets. And therefore, this mechanism which I am supporting today, I think that within that period, the government ought to be looking for methods of training. They have them all over. And they're relatively cheap. If we could build a Marriott, we could buy a couple of these equipment to assist in training drivers.
Maybe the driver who's arrogant and be suspended should pay for the cost of his...
Well, I'm coming to that, Mr. Speaker, I am coming to that too. Because nothing goes without a cost. My position is that while we identify these drivers, it could either be a police-based operation or a private sector-based operation. Some mechanism that is credible, that at the end of the day, errant drivers ought, at their own expense, pay for the cost of remedial training, which at the end of that activity, it ought to be determined whether or not they are fit to return to the streets. Because we are aiming as a nation to save our people from carnage on the roads. We are aiming as a people to produce better drivers. And so, Mr. Speaker, while I commend this bill, which I was associated with in my younger days in the Ghana Police Force, I would most respectfully recommend government that they introduce such training after identifying appropriate equipment, driving equipment that is. That would ensure that drivers are prepared, are made to change their ways through remedial training. And Mr. Speaker, with these few words, on behalf of a Partnership for National Unity, I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, member. I invite our Attorney General to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank all all my colleagues, starting with my colleague on this side, the Honorable Member Mr. Siraj, Mr. Williams, Mr. Ramjatan, and last but not least, Mr. Felix, for their support and their contribution to this debate. I have noted the points which have been made. To Mr. Ramjatan, I would like to say that when when a vehicle is sold by way of hire purchase, the hire purchase agreement is normally lodged along with a certificate of, it's stapled to a master copy of the certificate of registration and kept at the licensing office. On many occasions, the type of case to which you have made reference is where a certificate of registration is unlawfully obtained. It happens a lot, I agree, but this bill can't seek to correct that. That's another set of problems. I agree with the general sentiments expressed that, lawmaking is a continuous exercise, and I don't know of any legislator who has the vision that can see all the deficiency that are contained as society evolves and we evolve as a people. I'm sure that more and more amendments will come forth. Mr. Williams raised some issues about vicarious liability. Doesn't apply to criminal law. I don't agree with that concept at all. The civil law remains unchanged, and the honorable member spoke about situations where a person uses a vehicle for a short period of time and then goes overseas. Well, this bill doesn't deal with that. The owner, the registered owner, will remain responsible. This bill is dealing with situations where there have been genuine divestment of possession. That's what this bill deals with. It's not dealing with a man who lends his car to a relative who is in the country or for a temporary period. This is where instruments have actually been executed. Bills of sales, powers of attorney, hire purchase agreement. This is not a lending situation or a rental situation of a motor car. That motor car, the rental agreement covers liabilities in an adequate way. So that type of scenario are not applicable to this bill. The honorable member, Mr. Felix, has raised a very, very important point, that what happens during the interregnum of the suspension, and he has advanced the suggestion that there should be some type of remedial training to which the driver, the errant driver, should be subject. Those are concepts with which I am in absolute agreement. While they are not contained in the legislation, I see no doubt as a matter of policy why the relevant authorities, be it the Guyana Police Force or the licensing authority, cannot as a matter of policy do that. Because a license always is a discretionary instrument. There is no person who is absolutely entitled to a license. A license is always discretionary by its very nature, and it is always subject to conditions imposed on the license. And those conditions are rarely made the subject of legislation. So as a matter of policy, additional conditions can be imposed by the licensing authority and be attached to the license to achieve the important objective identified by the honorable member. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I wish to again thank all my colleagues and request that the bill be read a second time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Attorney General. I will now put the question, and that is that the bill be now read for the second time. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it, thank you. Let the bill be read the second time, Mr. Clerk, please read.
Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2014, Bill number 4 of 2014.
Thank you. Honourable members, we will resolve ourselves in the committee of the whole assembly to consider the bill clause by clause. Honourable members, the bill has some 8 clauses. I will go through them individually. Honourable members, I propose that clause 1 stands as part of this bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 1 stands as part of the bill. Members, I propose that clause 2 stands as part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 2 stands as part of the bill. Honourable members, I propose that clause 3 stands as part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Clause 3 stands as part of the bill. Members, I propose that clause 4 also stands as part of this bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Clause 4 stands as part of the bill. Members, I propose that clause 5 stands as part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 5 stands as part of the bill. Honourable members, I propose that clause 6 also stands as part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Sorry. The ayes have it. Thank you. Clause 6 stands as part of the bill. Honourable members, I propose that clause 7 stands as part of this bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Clause 7 stands as part of the bill. And last, I propose that clause 8 stands as part of this bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Clause 8 also stands as part of the bill. With your permission, I'd like for us to resume in assembly. Thank you. The assembly is resumed. Members, I believe I should invite the Honourable Attorney General to report. Please do so.
Thank you very much. I am pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that this bill was considered in committee clause by clause and approved in the manner presented. And I'm asking respectfully that it be read a third time.
Thank you. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be now read the third time and passed as printed. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Let the bill be read for the third time.
Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2014, Bill number 4 of 2014.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes our consideration of this very important bit of legislation. Honourable Attorney General, I was really in my mind thinking about a known instance where there was an accident and the driver and the conductor asked the passengers to come out of the bus, saying that they were taking the person they had struck to the hospital, but they dumped that person literally onto the parapet in the grass and drove off. And would that person get a 6-month suspension? That person, that we'll discuss it afterward. That person should never be allowed to drive anything again. Whether it be 6 or 10 months, but I'll discuss it with you afterwards. Honourable members, we will take the suspension, but before doing so, I'd like to remind members of the Standing Orders Committee that there is a very, very brief meeting which will be held